Hello and welcome to our first Kantara Initiative podcast. Over the last decade, Kantara has led the way in developing best practices and trust schemes in the digital identity and privacy space, with the goal of building trustworthy networks for all. Kantara is unique, as it is the only industry organization focused on privacy and digital identity. In this episode, we are with Colin Wallis, the Executive Director of Kantara. He shares his insights with you as head of a global consortium whose purpose is to grow and fulfill the market of trustworthy use of digital identity and personal data. He discusses what it means to him and why it is important.
Who is Kantara? It's a question we're quite often asked, but it's really it's a international trade association, an industry association incorporated in the USA, but with a global membership. And it's an organization that basically has some very distinct aspects to it. Why does the work that we do matter? Well, it matters because we're really in the business of wanting to create a more equitable exchange of consumers' identity and personal data, and a fair sort of a value exchange in that way. And we want to improve the trustworthy use of identity and personal data through all of our activities, really, innovation, standardization, and good practice. And the thing that we do that's probably most critical for many folks, our pièce de résistance, if you like, is the way that we build conformity assessment around standards, not just our own standards, but actually standards anywhere that industry demands, and we are particularly known for that. We're also known for what we do with our standards development. We're a kind of a blank sheet of paper kind of organization where literally there are problems in industry where there is nothing. And we literally start from a blank slate often to create best practice or standardization, not all of which necessarily go through to conformity assessment, but many are used in an international context. So, examples are consent receipt, which is now annexed into ISO 29184, online privacy notices and consent is one example. User managed access, the standardized extensions of OAuth 2, which are now in IETF and continually worked through. So these are examples. And also what we do with our innovation side with R&D, applied R&D programs. We basically broker and facilitate grant funding of those things and project manage. So you can see we have a very broad scope across what we do and across the world, because we have members from everywhere, really. More than half are actually outside the USA, even though, in fact, we're incorporated in the USA. Why do people join Kantara? We have such a mix of people. We have large organizations, household names, to mid-sized organizations and individuals as well. And the point is that they all find a place to work in Kantara. It's a unique organization in many respects. Most industry associations are what one would call pay to play, so that you basically have to have a membership in order to be a member of a working group or whatever. Kantara doesn't have that. Certainly parts of its organization, particularly in the conformity assessment program, require membership. You have to bind the organizer to the organization in that way. But certainly for standards development and those sorts of things, anyone can participate, anyone at all. And so when folks really want to make a difference to the ecosystem, they have a sense, they see work that we might be starting, or they feel that they want a place to start some work. They join Kantara to initiate that or potentially sponsor that. And as I say, with the conformity assessment program, particularly what we do with the certification of NIST 863 version 3, those folks join Kantara because it's a necessary part of that process, and indeed enabling them to be able to come into the working groups and assist with some of the preparatory work and the assessment criteria that relate to the ultimate approval, certification, and trust marking process. 3 words that describe the Kantara Initiative: Very interesting, because actually a lot of what we do is actually in threes. I talked about the conformity assessment program and the standardization and the R&D innovation. There's three right there. We often actually talk about that as in a soundbite of nurture, develop, operate. That's what we do. Trustworthy, transparent, transformational. Those are the three words that really encapsulate what Kantara is about in the activities it carries out, its place in the ecosystem, and essentially our dedication to the community and the ecosystem. Is there a typical Kantara Initiative member? Good question, and one that we have a variety of answers to. There is no typical Kantara member because of the spread of our scope of activities. Typically, they are inquiring. I mean, if you're looking for a common denominator, they're folks that want to make a difference. They want to transform the way in which the ecosystem is working now. That might be new work. That might be resurrecting and reprofiling some older work or more established work. And also, I think in terms of the conformity assessment program, they're typically an identity provider or a service provider, credential service provider of some description. And they're very much in the industry supplying services and see the value that Kantara adds to the ecosystem generally with its conformity assessment program, particularly against NIST 800-63-3. We're pretty much we're highly respected in that area and pretty much have it to ourselves. We are really the only folks that are doing NIST 863 conformity assessment. They're also international. Remember that we have with a wide variety of geographies and nation states. In Kantara's membership, we have interesting geographic lines of interest, which I find something that is joyful. There are several reasons why people join Kantara today, partly to do with the conformity assessment program and their desire to get assessed, approved, and trust marked against the Kantara Initiative identity assurance framework, because that is respected around the world. And so from that perspective, that's certainly a main reason and a main driver to do that. The other thing is really about our sense of community and the purpose around our work. There's a lot of folks today that are doing a lot of new work, and so do we. But there's a great emphasis, if you like, in Kantara on creating best practice in a very, very equitable way. And they recognize that because we're, another one of our short sound bites is that we're ethics and conformance trust marked. And what they see in that is that they want to actually add value to the organization and let the organization succeed by bringing in their membership dues. Because without membership dues, we obviously can't fully survive, but we certainly are very grateful for those members that choose to support Kantara because of its ethics and ethos about community, about no barriers to participation. Has COVID-19 accentuated the importance of the work coming out of Kantara? I think so, actually, when I think of that question, because what we have with COVID-19 is a case in point where, particularly with certain aspects of testing and so on, the identity of the person is sometimes really needed, and particularly actually less so for testing. It's actually more to do with payments. When the government is actually giving payouts to organizations or individuals, then it's really important to have a good sense of their identity. And of course, much of that is actually driven by identity providers. So you can see how that plays back to organizations who have already been third-party assessed, approved, and trust marked that they're assured against a particular set of digital identity standards. So from that perspective, absolutely important. Thanks for joining me today. It's been my pleasure to share my thoughts on Kantara with you and to help inform you about a decision I would hope to come and join us at Kantara and join our community as vibrant and healthy and outlooking and outgoing and equitable that it is. So thank you very much indeed. And please, by all means, reach out to me, Colin at kantarainitiative.org, or reach out to the Contact Us link in the Kantara website. For any questions you might have on joining Kantara as an individual member, as a corporate member, wanting to sponsor work in Kantara, we do it all. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to be on the lookout for more Kantara podcasts.